That thumbs up means that we're ready. Hello, and welcome to the Everett City Council Committee meeting of February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day 2024, and this is the Built Environment Committee. I am Councilmember Liz Vogeley, and we have co-chair Ben Zarlingo, and we will soon be joined by Councilmember Bader. And I will read this. The public is welcome to attend in person or remotely. There will be no public comment during committee meetings. And go to the website to find out who you can call, because if you're watching now, you already know. And on our agenda, this is an exciting one. We have Everett Housing Authority Park District Project Update. And we'll be talking later about web pages, accomplishments, goal settings, and next meeting topics. So for that, we have Planning Director
Yorick Stevens-Wajda.
Yorick Stevens-Wajda. I know your name, but yes, please take it away.
You have a lot to hold in your mind there. Thank you, Council Member and Committee Chair Vogeley. Good evening, Yorick Stevens-Wajda, Planning Director. So we thought we'd give an opportunity, kind of a sneak peek at what is coming before the full council, mainly in the month of March, which is the Park District Development and the 4 ordinances that comprise the first step in that phase. We're going to the Planning Commission next week on Tuesday, February 20th. There will be a public hearing before the Planning Commission, and we will ask the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to the council on 2 of those 4 ordinances, the Plan Development Overlay and the Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Thought this would be a good opportunity to begin to orient the committee to this work and see what questions you might have. I took a look at our timeline. This is actually the 4th time we've come to this committee over the life of this development, 3 times last year in 2023. As the design has evolved and as we've learned more about the potential impacts and amenities in the design and everything like that. So the Planning Commission packet, and for those who are watching online, you can find that on there's a web page for the Park District. If you find your favorite search engine and look up Everett Park District, that should be enough to find it. It's a city website, and the Planning Commission packet is also available on the Planning Commission's website. Everett Planning Commission would be the words to search for there. This represents kind of the most comprehensive staff review of the materials that we've had to date, so it's a good starting point to orient to the process. As a reminder, the development of the site proposes 4 ordinances, a comprehensive plan amendment that would allow for areas subject to a planned development overlay that are over 5 acres, and that was designed to be essentially practically limited to the Park District. The multifamily designation, which currently has a height limit of 10 stories, could be extended to 15 stories. So it is essentially just for the Park District, and the reason that it is just for the Park District because we are working through a comprehensive plan periodic update in which we will overhaul the entire comprehensive plan, and we would change that provision one way or the other. That will come through the council over the next year. Excited to really dive deeply into that comprehensive plan, which a lot of the issues that have come up over the Park District are equally relevant to that comprehensive plan update. But just a little note on why it is practically limited to the Park District. So this would not, that aspect would not open up taller buildings elsewhere in the city, at least at this point, and any such decisions would be left to the periodic update on that. The Plan Development Overlay is number 2. Plan Development Overlay is comprised of 3 attachments. There is Exhibit A1, and the packet that we're looking through is the Planning Commission packet. It includes a staff memo, a proposed Planning Commission resolution, and then there are 3 attachments to that resolution that are the Plan Development Overlay. Yes, that's one of them. The other ones are in the staple here. So Exhibit A1 are the regulations. The regulations must be consistent with the comprehensive plan and otherwise can make specific tailored regulations for a master plan development such as the Park District. It looks like this, Exhibit A1, and essentially contains a series of modifications to Title 19, which is the development regulations for the city. It should be clear in here which chapters of Title 19 will continue to apply in full and which chapters would be modified in some way. Among those would be, I think the two main modifications are allowing non-residential uses. The underlying zone here is UR3, which is a multifamily residential zone. The proposal includes some retail, some civic uses, some nonprofit space, all of which would be uses that would be allowed within this development. You can see that on page 3 of this Exhibit A1. The permitted uses that would not otherwise be allowed in the UR3 zone include microbrewery, daycare center, entertainment, recreation, food and beverage, offices, clinics, retail sales and service, and veterinary clinic, with some special regulations attached to them.
Wait, those are already allowed, or they're not allowed or not gonna be allowed?
They are currently not allowed in the zone. With the plan development overlay, they would be allowed in the zone. So those would fill, I think all told, roughly 60,000 square feet of non-residential space. There are tenants in mind and types in mind, so not all of these would necessarily be used, but these would be the regulations in effect for the duration of the development build-out. At some point, we will need to decide what to make permanent regulations. The plan development overlay is mainly intended to serve as a guide to the development and the build-out of a site, and at some point, we should replace it, and this could be 20 years out. We should replace it with a zone that works permanently. If we did not, and this plan development overlay went away, the uses that were in place would be able to continue as legal non-conforming uses. That's not ideal, but it does work.
Why wait 20 years when we're doing the comprehensive plan now?
That would be an option. Yep.
Okay.
To establish, essentially make a zone. Our current zone structure, once you get into something like neighborhood business or mixed urban, the zones that allow a broader array of uses, sometimes it's too broad for this area. That's why the plan development overlay works really well, because you can pick just the ones that would be appropriate in this exact area without having to think of what is appropriate in the mixed urban zone citywide. So we would have to get a little bit creative with how we defined that. That could be done in the comprehensive plan update, definitely, or sometime along those 20 years as the site kind of matures.
Okay, thank you.
On the second page, there are some public, institutional, and quasi-public uses. I'll highlight the ones that would not otherwise be allowed in the UR3 zone. Those include food bank, library, religious facility, transit station would be normally a conditional use, and it would be a permitted use, so an easier approval pathway. So that's it in terms of the uses that would otherwise not be allowed in the zone, and that's the first major purpose of the plan development overlay. The second one is heights. Flipping to the next page, page 5 of
Real
Exhibit
quick,
A1.
before
Yep,
that,
absolutely.
I know I've asked this before, and I'll ask again. Could you please tell us what P, A, and C stand for?
Thank you, yes. P is a permitted use. It can just be established as long as the building meets other regulations. Uses are distinct from building and structure, size and type and all of that. The use is what you're doing in that area. A P permitted use means you can just go do it without any discretionary approval from the city. A is an administrative use permit. That is a discretionary permit that can include conditions by the city. The decision is at an administrative department level. C is a conditional use process, and that is similar to the administrative use process, except the hearing examiner makes the decision, can impose conditions, has criteria to review.
So that automatically goes to
Yep.
the examiner.
Correct. Automatically goes to a hearing examiner, yes. So by changing an A to a P, you could just have a religious facility in, if there was the non-residential space that would accommodate it without having to come to the city for a conditional or an administrative use permit. The reason we have those is that religious facilities, I think in the UR3 zone, that might be in a location that would need some special attention and some special conditions to be a good fit with the immediate neighbors. Here we know what the immediate neighbors would be. And I think for the non-residential space, the immediate neighbors are other parts of the park district because they're interior to the space.
And that for, I guess, for my clarification, maybe for the uninitiated, that's the whole thing for P and planned, in that this is an overall plan, so all these things kind of come together when this is being put together, and so you can see what it's going to be, and they can intend for it to be a particular kind of thing.
Correct, right, yep. In the regular zoning code, it has to be equally applicable and workable, whether it's in north, south, next to an arterial, on a smaller street, small parcel, large parcel, all of those. So the next one is height. This modifies chapter 1922, which is where heights are regulated in the city, and using that comprehensive plan amendment that would have preceded it, establishes a couple of different height areas. These are further refined in Exhibit C, but we'll Exhibit C being the actual site plan and more specifics into which buildings will look like what and be how tall. But for the purposes of the regulatory environment, which is more difficult to amend down the line, should there be a want to, would have to come back to the council. You have height area A that is clustered to the south west portion of the site, attempted to be as far from lower scale development adjacent to the park district as possible. That would be up to 15 floors, and then most of the other site is limited to 9 floors. There are a couple stretches which would be more like townhouse height of 4 floors.
And I guess a quick question, you'd mentioned earlier that maximum height going from 10 floors to 15, but here the UR3 zone is listed as 4 floors or 50 feet.
Yeah, the underlying zone is 4 floors. The underlying zoning for this site is 4 floors. The UR3 zone, actually, we have separated in our system, we've separated heights from zones. So in some areas, the UR3 zone might be higher than 4 floors. In other areas, it might be lower.
And
But in this case, it's, right now, it's 4 floors.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm seeing UR3 zone, a white rectangle that covers all of the heights. And in the map,
And we would replace that with the colors.
okay, because the colors are not corresponding to what your voice is saying.
Right.
Okay. And I guess while we're on floors, that was a big topic last week. And 15 floors has changed from the 10 floors that we had heard of previously. I'm not actually remembering that, so I'm just taking what people that are very invested in this have said out loud. So something that I do remember is for like trying to get people to build downtown, there's not requirements, the opposite of that. We will give you something if you build incentives. Thank you. There are incentives to build higher. How did the 15 floors come about in this situation? And could we do something, if it isn't written down already, for an incentive, I guess, for the city, really, not necessarily for the builder, because the builder wants to do it, but we need some things too. So, can you help fill in my thought?
Yep, yeah, sure thing. I'll say that the design of what comes after Baker Heights has been underway for a long time. I was actually looking for something else in our planning commission folder, and ran across an agenda item from 2004. So 20 years ago, was a discussion item on the future redevelopment of Baker Heights. That went through a couple fits and starts. The latest era, I think, it really started in earnest about 2 years ago. EHA did a series of community meetings and had some consultants on board and worked up a design. When it came to the city, it was, some of the early designs did top out at 10 floors. At some point along, I can't remember exactly when it was, but sometime last year, EHA suggested for 2 reasons. One, the economics of buildings. Once you get up to 10 floors, you're already having to invest in some more sturdy construction type, concrete and steel. Elevators, other aspects of the building code make the construction cost higher, and you are less able to recoup those costs through leasable space. There's a journal article that they sent over that I'm working with our library to get access to that goes through that with some numbers attached to it. But suffice it to say that 10 floors is difficult to pencil, 15 floors is economical. So I think that was one of the reasons. And then a side benefit or a core benefit of that also is the number of dwelling units has been the same since this has come to the city at 1,500. Taller buildings means less floor area, more area available for the park and other landscaping open space.
I would just add, just having been more involved with the project earlier on, so in those first couple of years, that I think some of it is the way that the city calculates floors versus height versus, so we calculate it in a somewhat unique way, and I think as they were studying like what does 10 floors mean, and then on a sloped site too, so what does it mean at this end of the site and at the other. So I think that was a nuance too, that and it's definitely true, like I remember being at the Delta neighborhood meeting in mid 2022 and talking to them about 10 floors, and as the Everett Housing Authority has refined the design, it's come to, you know, today's point, which is really the sort of the final ask, I guess, at 15 floors.
And with that, and talking about housing units, would 15 floors make it, okay. Can it be either more units of living or more retail or some kind of civically usable space? Or are those 5 more floors going to be all residential? Or is that?
I guess that's, right now, the design is settled since August, I think it was. August of 2022 is when, for the most part, this Exhibit C, which has the site plans and the elevations. So the top floors, I think, are residential. Whether non-residential space was added as a result of going from 10 floors to 15 floors in total height, I'm not sure. I can ask EHA that.
And I missed the last EHA board meeting, so sorry. They probably talked about something. Okay. I'm sure I'll interrupt you again.
Sure, absolutely. And it is true, it's worth noting that how heights are measured is also modified with this plan development overlay.
And speaking of that, we now know that high vaulted ceilings are abysmal for keeping heat and making things cool. And by cool, I mean temperature-wise. So I would hope, and I'm sure that you could tell us, that the heights of the units are not vaulted unless it's, I mean, how's that going? Is that coming to play with how many floors we've got and energy saving measures?
We do have Olivier Land. I don't know if we want to get into these details today, who can maybe weigh in on that. I will point you and other readers to the last 2 pages of the staff memo to the Planning Commission,
Okay.
which is an exhibit of responses to some similar questions that came up at the Planning Commission that
cool.
EHA pulled together. There is a section on sustainability benefits. It doesn't touch on ceiling height itself, but touches on some other measures that EHA's intent is to make this as sustainable as a development as possible, and of course, the density of it, for lack of a better word, is a big piece of that, just right off out of the gate.
Thank you.
And you began a thought about what the city gets for the extra height, something along those lines. And I think the idea is that the development as a whole represents a higher level of quality than you might otherwise see. There is the open space, the Central Park open space. There is a lot of landscaping. There's a lot of attention to design and things that cost maybe more money than the private sector might usually provide in there. There is the potential for support for nonprofit and civic uses at maybe a good deal for them, or at least reserving some space for them. So it is designed to have a lot of aspects that make it a positive addition to the city beyond just buildings.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll move forward in the plan development overlay. Those were the two main ones, the uses and the heights. Setbacks are gonna operate much differently within this development because they don't really share parcel boundaries with other developments, although where they do in two specific places, there's definitely landscaping considerations that should handle that transition well. Signs are UR3. Obviously, signs are very limited, and so there's a sign category that fits with this type of a site that is addressed there. Parking is amended, and that is in section 7 of the PDO, and that is based on a pretty comprehensive plan. I was going to bring a copy of it, but it's 89 pages, a comprehensive parking analysis and transportation analysis that was done by some consultants that has the justification, and the experts feel pretty comfortable that the parking ratio will be sufficient based on data that they've collected in other similarly situated communities in the region.
And that might be available online?
Yes, that is an appendix to the draft environmental impact statement. Every material that I'm talking about is on that Park District webpage. DEIS, Draft Environmental Impact Statement Appendix, is where you'll find the transportation study. That is probably about it for the plan development overlay. And then there are design standards that are specific to this. That is Exhibit A2, the second of 3 components of the plan development overlay. And these design standards include some flexibility and some planning director authority to review. As the way this will work is if the 4 ordinances are passed by the council, that will establish the guardrails, the standards for the whole development, and then individual phases would be handled through building permit and public works permit and other construction permits. Staff will review those building permit and construction permits against the provisions of the plan development overlay. Some of the specific details on design have not been worked out. I will say this development plan is farther along than most are at this planned development overlay phase. So a lot of the details are pretty well handled, but the buildings haven't had final architectural details added to them. So these design standards will provide rules for that specific design, and then the city would review individual building permits and we will be directed to reject any building permit application that does not conform to the level of quality and regulations in this plan development overlay. So there's things about porches, there's things about the streetscapes and sidewalks and landscaping areas, building frontages, articulation and modulation so that the buildings are not flat monoliths, those sorts of things. Transparency and outdoor and common areas, there's some images in there. And yeah, this is all of the details, I would say. A1 is the big stuff, the height and the uses. A2 is all of the architectural details.
The question I'd see, parking, under the multifamily parking requirement, you see repeated versions of the .7 spaces, but also additional standards, parking on private streets and access drives may be counted as part of the required parking supply. Do you have a sense of where that would be?
Yeah,
On
and
this
those
site.
are within the development. If we pop over.
Those are.
Inside the
Those are
development.
private streets inside the development, inside the PDO boundaries.
Yes, yes. So you can actually see on this one, for example, wherever there are these curb cuts.
Okay,
So those would be loading primarily and short-term parking. But if there are permanent parking spots that those, and it's not gonna be a large number of them, but those could be counted towards the total number of
okay.
parking spaces.
And those are the new streets that are created after the vacation that we were discussing last week of the existing streets there?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So no credit for parking on streets outside of the park district.
That's, did you hear that, everybody? Oh, do you know if the census tracts here are part of the grant for trees that the city has gotten? And will they be utilizing space for additional trees and?
Yes, so these census tracts and then the ones are in the broader Casino Road area are the two areas that fit the park's work on tree canopy. But I think that work is largely not connected with the park district development. And also is on a shorter timeline because this development is a 10-year phase in. And so I don't remember the exact timing for that tree grant, but it's probably in the next couple of years or less, so.
I just know that getting everybody on the same page is something that I like to have happen. And traffic engineering is very interested in that parks planning because maybe putting trees in the medians. Because, yes. Okay.
So I think unless there's anything on the design standards, that's actually an okay segue into Exhibit C. Exhibit C is the site plan and kind of the map type versions of this. Pairs with the regulations and the design standards to round out what the plan is. Again, there's a level of detail that will be added in future building permit phases, but it must be consistent with what we see here. You mentioned trees, and I can point you to the third page, the second or third page, depending if you count the title page. It's one with some green on it, and you see the trees. So those, for example, this would be the expected location and distribution of different types and sizes of trees. Now, these have been worked out down to, we've removed trees where we might need a ladder truck to swing a ladder over, so utility conflicts, driveway clearance lines, and all of that has been reviewed, so this should be a pretty good estimate, but of course,
By
if
our
anything
urban
comes up.
forester?
I don't believe we have an urban forester?
We do now, April 2023.
Cool.
We do, but I think that consideration is probably more the fire marshal and the fire access piece, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think we should definitely consult with the urban
Yeah.
forester as we decide the specific tree species, if that hasn't already been done, or at least consult on it, so.
Sweet.
And then I guess to link back to your earlier comment, the amount of trees and green space we see here in green on this diagram is larger than it might otherwise be if we were talking about something that was limited to a lower number of floors. That's what the.
Correct. If you maintain the same amount of floor area and reduce the height, then those floors have to go somewhere, and so presumably they would, I mean, there's different ways that you could arrange it, but in general, you would result with less open space on the ground. You could reduce the number of housing units, but then that impacts the objectives of EHA and the proposal. This does also provide, there's a requirement for common and open space that's in Chapter 9, 19.09. Has requirements of, I believe it's 100 square feet of common and open space per unit.
Okay.
That can be, includes interior common areas, if you have a game room or that type of thing. It includes rooftop decks and that type of thing. This development, if you compare the number of dwelling units to the open space that they have just on the ground, not counting what I'm sure they will have interior common spaces, it greatly exceeds what the basic requirement for common and open space would be, and it tilts it dramatically towards the outdoor. Only 25% of it is required to be outdoor, I believe, normally, so you wind up with a lot of those kind of game room type of things. And here,
Playgrounds next to the busy streets.
yeah, and some that needs to be active recreation space. You can see in here, there's a couple, I think it's the lighter green is active recreation space. One of these has it called out specifically. But there is a concept for some playground type uses within the development as well. And then on the top of the page is a community garden that replaces one that is currently on site that would essentially move.
Sorry, I heard community garden, but I didn't hear where, on the ground or way up top? Because
on
both
the-
would be cool.
Yeah, I guess up top might be still under consideration, but on the, it's hard because these are all rotated. This is west.
Yes.
West near the wetlands, so we're going to make sure that that it's compatible because
So an organic community garden with
think that-
not so,
I
sorry.
think that would be a wise move and possibly a condition for it because it does slope down towards a wetland. Now there's a buffer in between of land that could purify some of that water, but still want to.
Nitrogen runoff is bad.
Right. Yeah, so the rest of this Exhibit C is, describes what the development will look like, and you can expect some relatively minor changes to that as the development is refined.
And this is online as well,
This is online, yes. So all of,
in this kind of resolution, so we can.
yeah, yep. Yeah, the only problem is some of these are large files, but yes, got full resolution for all of these. So those are, sorry, do that again. That's the comprehensive plan amendment and the plan development overlay. Those are the two parts of this that are coming to the planning commission on Tuesday, and that we will be asking for a recommendation from the planning commission on. You'll see in the memo that staff are recommending at this time approval of the plan development overlay and the comprehensive plan amendment. We will have, I'm sure, a robust discussion with the planning commission. We will have a public hearing and hear from the public. They've been provided with all of the written comments to date, and they've had some verbal comments over the number of meetings that they've held on this as well. And then we're hoping that they deliver a recommendation to you, and then it will be your turn.
And that public hearing is next week along with the planning commission hearing?
Yes, next Tuesday. It's the only item on the agenda, so we've cleared the decks for just this topic. 6:30 p.m. in this room, City Council chambers.
And the planning commission can make changes or recommendations to this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It could come in the form of a specific and direct amendment. It could come in the form of a general theme to ask the council to look closer at. If it's not something that's fully formed and ready,
Okay.
they could say we would like the project team and the council to look closer at insert topic here.
Okay.
And so at the planning commission, I imagine this is where a lot of the Delta neighborhood statement of position pieces might, of course, they'll be brought up, but might very easily be discussed and possibly made into amendments.
Right. Yes, that would be a great place. I was actually able to meet with the chair and co-chair of the Delta neighborhood yesterday, I think it was. And we talked over some of the kind of issues of concern for them with the development. And I do want to I do want to say that some of those are comprehensive plan and city kind of issues. Some of them are exacerbated by the Park District. If there's concerns about traffic and speeding, there would be more trips coming out of this neighborhood, and those two are related. And there's some that are continue to be under discussion, and I think we'll be able to handle. Yeah.
One other thing, the affordability and pricing of these units and the demographics and that sort of thing. Now, of course, with elevators, we can get, as opposed to multi-floor things, we can get a wider range of ages and disabilities and that sort of thing. But I guess, is that an inherent part of the PDO, or is that simply a result of the way the PDO and the comprehensive plan changes are made?
In terms of its, I think.
We're not talking about a legal requirement here for a
Right.
particular affordability
Correct,
criteria.
correct. EHA has,
Yeah, other than the EHA has a commitment to meet the number of units that were on the Baker Heights property historically. So they provided some, like 100-ish. I'm not gonna say numbers,
busted
I'm
last
sure.
week on that
I
one.
know, Yorick sweated it up last
Yeah,
week, so.
Yeah, that's right.
But there's like 100, 200-ish at Madrona Square. 105 at Right, so 105 at Madrona Square that have been recently built, and then the remaining 139 that would make up what was on Baker Heights would be, and that's really a commitment, it's kind of at the, sort of their, I guess a national commitment more than a city commitment, with their HUD funding, for Baker Heights. So that 139 would have to be part of this. And it's sort of mixed income, so mixed throughout the development. And like other projects that have, MFTE funding, it's not like, it's gotta be this corner, it's gotta be this basement unit, it's throughout the site. Lots more units than that, right? So a total of 1,500, and those, are just market rate, workforce.
The rates on the
And,
affordable ones would be set by a percentage of incomes that have to do with.
Yeah,
the
and I think on
standards.
average, 60% of area median income.
Would you like to be invited to the table for a moment? You can say yes or no.
yeah, come on.
No
Olivier Landa,
is a viable option, but if you have,
Olivier Landa,
I am-
Everett Housing Authority Design Principal, more on the architecture side than the Everett Housing Authority policy side, but has probably been party to some of these conversations. I will say from the city's perspective and from the regulatory framework, there is currently not any requirements baked into this, so it would be at EHA's discretion at what level to rent these units, and EHA's intent, other than the 100 and XY units, that there would be a mission-driven housing approach that would include a mix of incomes, but beyond that.
I guess I just thought you might have either wanted to agree or be like, well, actually, that number is. So if you have anything that you want to add to this, click that button and,
You did.
yep,
got
you
it.
got it. If
Yeah,
it's
so-
red,
So the 139 will be subsidized to an AMI level. And then the rest of it is mixed income, but our mission is that it'll all be under market rate.
you heard it here first, folks, or third, maybe even 17th.
And then just because I listened in to last week's meeting, not supportive housing.
Right.
So supportive housing, folks that need support services, it's not, they wouldn't be providing supportive services on site for that type of housing, but yeah.
And I think we can expect EHA and the whole consultant team and the Director of Development and Real Estate, if I got the title right, will all be there for the Planning Commission. I expect a little bit of a presentation from them on that aspect, and I think Jason Morrow, that Director of Development and Real Estate, can say it better than I or Olivier can. And we'll also make sure to tee that up for the council, because that's something that comes up pretty frequently. Now, I think flexibility and not knowing exactly what the needs of the future will be will leave us with a little, not full certainty on the rents are gonna be this number.
And I'll just say from my very own opinion that, as everybody all knows, you're not gonna please everyone. And where there's not NIMBYs right now, saying no to the poors, right now, the ones that we're hearing are saying, yes, bring them in as soon as you make it completely AMI 60%, 80%, then the other faction will come out. So having a nice wide range of options for living is fantastic, and together, and housing is what we need.
I will say that we'll work with EHA on the city's housing targets, and this will be a feature of the comprehensive plan update. We have a housing target for about 39,000 units. So with this development, we know at least 1,500 of them, which is some 5% or so, will be developed. Now, there are economic segments that we are to target, and I think that distribution should probably be a factor in this
I
as
mean,
well.
even in the SCT or whatever the thing is that we listen to, and we need like high end,
Yep.
which is silly to think about, not silly, but like hard to comprehend that we need more high end apartments for well-off folks. When there's so many of us that are not well off and also need housing. But, so it's so interesting and intricate, and the conversation that can be had about housing will last a lot longer than we have this meeting for.
One other question that's come up about transit. Now, I assume that that's kind of a separate discussion would be now with Everett Transit, they would evolve their services to meet as this gets built out.
Yep. So there's a plan for a rebuilt bus stop on Poplar. There's current transit service there. There would continue to be transit service there. And with this type of a population, I would fully expect us within the resources to plan for additional service there. Community Transit is working on a plan for this Swift Gold line, which will go from Arlington, Marysville to downtown central Everett via Broadway, which would have a stop very close walking distance to this. So guaranteed, from as much as that can be guaranteed in the long range plan for community transit, to bring significant new service a couple blocks away, and then Everett Transit presumably would be able to bring solid service directly to the site as well. I want to touch on quickly the other two parts of this. So we talked about the comprehensive plan amendment and the plan development overlay. Those are the regulations that will govern the development for its build out. The street vacation we heard about last week, and that is going to be paired with a boundary line adjustment and a statutory warranty deed to complete the street reconfiguration according to this site plan that will result in the city's right-of-way being reestablished as laid out here.
So the perimeter remains the same. These are internal things to the perimeter of the district
Correct.
property.
Correct. Poplar is not being vacated, it's actually being just added to. The other 3 streets are being vacated and replaced by 2 with a new street going crosswise. The last part is the development agreement. The development agreement has its primary purpose being locking in the plan development overlay for the term of the build out, so that EHA has the predictability to start building the site and not worry that a future council could cut the rug out from under them. So it'll be a contractual instrument between EHA and the city that vests these regulations for a build-out period of, I think it's 10 years plus extensions of 5 by mutual agreement, should that be necessary. It can also clarify some financial considerations, and it can clarify almost inevitably, some amendment will need to be made in the future as economic conditions change or what have you. And it will provide some predictability of what would be a minor amendment that staff can approve versus what is a major amendment that would have to come to the city council. An example recently was Riverfront and the change to the theater use, and that was an amendment to a plan development overlay in the form of a development agreement. So that, which was a little bit confusing for us to administer, so we're taking some lessons learned and developing that development agreement. That's a council sole discretion, so we'll pair up that development agreement. We're working hard on it with legal counsel on both sides, and we've got a pretty solid draft here, and you'll see that come in your packet in your March meeting. That is the Park District in a nutshell. Again, we're targeting March, potentially every meeting in March that you'll have us for, or however many it takes to get to a level of comfort.
I had one other question with respect to the building heights that'll be unaccustomed to people, and in our low winter sun and those kinds of things, are there elements in the design that take into account shading, cool winter days, that sort of stuff? You know, is there anything in particular you do that way, or how it might affect nearby properties?
I'll say there is a shadow study, so we can see exactly where the shadows will line up on a cold winter's day. They're everywhere. It's like a mailbox casts a shadow about.
Well, I'm not sure that 15 stories would be that much more than 10, but yeah, it certainly would be more than 4 or 5.
So the analysis is there. Yeah, it looks pretty rough in December, but a little bit better when people are more interested in it in the spring and the summer. In terms of design techniques, I know that was a consideration all along. I think the reason some of the taller buildings are farther south is to avoid shading Wiggums Hollow Park, for instance, and I think the gardens are benefit from some of that solar access. And then another aspect, I guess, another thing that taller buildings can be is skinnier, not just more space on the ground, but the whole plate of it. So I don't remember if the buildings got skinnier when they moved from 10 to 15, but just as a geometric fact, they could be.
So it seems like the 1,500 units or so was kind of a target from the beginning in this kind of thing. I'm not sure how that was
Yeah, that
established
comes
just
up a
in terms-
lot. It was your strategic plan.
Yeah, I think it was set by the board some years back as a mission.
Well then, Planning Commission meeting is Tuesday at 6:30 PM right here
Be there or watch it.
on Everett Channel or YouTube or Granicus or something. Thank you. Sorry, can you tell me your name again? Olivier. Thank you for jumping in when asked. And thank you, Yorick. I think we'll be done with this.
Yep.
Right.
If you have any other kind of questions, or hopefully that was a good orientation for both you and folks who are watching. If there's any questions or types of information that you think would help the council, I've gotten some at last week's meeting and over the last year as well as here. But if anything else comes to mind to help make this a smooth decision-making process for you, we'd be happy to help with that.
Great. Do you want to come back for next week?
They're yours.
Oh, great.
The rest of them, yeah, they're yours. And for folks who come to the planning commission meeting, we'll have some of those available for those who prefer in paper.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
And I'm sure we'll have other questions concerning not just this, but how on earth we're going to get all of those wonderful things built in downtown. So now we shall hear a little bit. Yes, you are free to go.
You both are.
Happy Valentine's Day. Thanks. I think we're probably done, but we're not going to be done yet because I've said so.
I can touch on the last 3 items real quick if you want.
I would definitely, yes,
Yeah,
please.
Real quick, yeah. I added the committee webpage update because that conversation came up at your council retreat. Angie's updated the webpage with the current committee members. Maybe take a look if there's any other information you want on there. It's got links to the agenda center, archived agendas. Now, you guys noted that those are like, it's all the council stuff, so built environment, it's in there with everything else. But yeah, if there's, anything else you want to have updated regularly, mostly let Angie know, but you can talk about that. 2023 accomplishments are open right here. We talked a bit about the comprehensive plan a handful of times. We had a great summary of last year's legislative session. That was a big one related to housing. I'd be happy to do that again, although there's much less activity on the housing front this session than last. But if there's relevant things, we can do that, in a couple months, once the session's over. You guys also had some code reviews last year around those incentives related to development downtown, and actually not just downtown, throughout the city, the multifamily tax exemption program, the ADU code amendment, school heights, and then we've talked about the park district a few times. And we did the bike master plan. We've done a lot of planning stuff. You guys also have public works sort of broadly in this category. We've had some updates from them. So that's what we did last year. And then maybe if you've got a couple minutes, if you want to talk about any topics that you want to see come before you in the coming year, we could do that now, or I'll be asking for them in a month before the next meeting.
Well, a quick note, being out and about when having electric bikes and scooters zipping by at some amazing speeds, with respect to streets, sidewalks, bike lanes, the use of those things, I don't think our community members are all that clear on that sort of thing, and we probably need to be looking at least at the current state of things and maybe forward a little bit, because the ranges and speeds are going up, the prices are going down, the use of it's going up, but I'm not sure people know what to do and what not to do, and we don't know what to legislate or not.
Yes, to go along with that, I know that we don't get to plan what the city looks like necessarily, but Everett Mall Way, and I see the change a-coming on their building right now, and I know they have big plans. I don't know what they are. I don't know if the world knows what they are, or if it's being incrementally let known to us public folks. So I'm very interested in that built environment, Everett Mall Way, with space for other people that are not in cars, but electric bikes and scooters and walking and crutches.
Well, and we might, if Brixton Capital or representative would like to come and talk sometime, that'd be completely welcome either to the committee or to the council. I think it was quite some time ago since we heard from them, and so welcome hearing anything if they happen to be here and want to brief us.
For sure. I would second that, even though we don't need a second, and we're not voting on anything. Let's see. And I think the parks and quality of life is doing more of the, storefront stuff. So, and I'm on that committee as well, so I'll be pretty vocal.
That's good. We'll keep it, not to cut you off,
No,
but we'll
yeah.
keep it on there, and I think things will come up, and I assume, comprehensive plans, we talked about it last year, there's still more to talk about, I'm sure. Yorick will come back to us again with updates as that gets closer.
Yeah, I have a question that you can answer. How many floors is the H&N property in Delta?
They don't do a lot of stuff over 4 floors, but
It seems like it's more than 4, but I'm just curious what it is. I know it's not 15. Yes, York Stevens Watchdog, back to the microphone.
Are those more of a production for, I think I don't know the answer, the four corners and how tall the buildings are?
No, the one that's
No.
by Jackson Park.
Oh, yes, Riverside.
Yeah.
I believe that is. Yeah, maybe 5 or 6.
Okay, I'll go look. Do you know about the park, or I mean, the Four Corners? How tall that is?
I think that's 6 or 7.
That's in my neighborhood, by the way.
I will send you an email with the answers to both.
Okay, it's a curiosity. I mean, I can go and like, I can count windows. Awesome, thank you. All right, then, we have some things to look forward to, some things to be proud of, and some things that we will hear about from our constituents, no doubt. With that, I'll just plain adjourn it. I don't know when we're meeting next. It's on the calendar somewhere. Thank you very much, and goodbye.